When you see a fire edit, you always think I'm gonna recreate this. Then you open After Effects, you break it down frame by frame, and somehow your version ends up looking like a $5 CapCut edit. Well, good news, you won't have to guess and be in the dark, because I'm gonna show you the detailed process of how I created a banger animation for one of my recent intros. Just take a look. But what actually makes an outstanding edit? Movement, color consistency, or maybe deep glow with radius at 2000? Yeah, I mean it's all that, but we're gonna focus on one thing for the most part: effects. People love saying less is more, but sometimes the right combo of effects can take our animation from this to this. So today I'm gonna give you the knowledge that will help you level up your edits. But before we jump in, there are only a little over 24 hours left before the Black Friday early access ends. On my story you will find ready to use assets that speed up the workflow, and we're literally using some of them today. So grab the offer before the timer hits 0 and let's get straight into Adobe After Effects. Alright, we're back in software. Here you get the comp settings, 3840 by 2160. This is gonna be an extremely crispy animation because we're gonna be working with 4K. Then the frame rate is gonna be set to 30 and also duration to around 5 seconds. Let's hit OK. And essentially the first thing you want to do is grab the round rectangle tool and you want to create a Google search bar. So here you want to type in the text and then on top you want to add Google Writing. But instead of that, I'm going to support myself with Motion Essence. So we're going to make it easy for ourselves. So I'm going to head over to the search bars and I'm going to grab Google search onto the timeline. And then we want to scale it up almost to the edge over here. So we should have something like that. And also a pretty cool thing with these animations is that we can rasterize them. So if I click here, the quality is gonna be crispy as hell. But yeah, for now, let's turn it off to have the better playback. And what I'm gonna do is grab any video, any animation, because we need something in the background. So for this, I'm gonna use the animation we've created in one of the previous tutorials. Let me just show you how it looks. So something like that, which is gonna serve here pretty well. But something that would help is have a lot of details in that video. So for example, here we have newspapers, so you got a lot of text and this is gonna help with one of the effects. So let's drop it below and then I'm gonna solo out the layer, and what you wanna do is mask it out. So first, I'm gonna scale it up to the size of the comp, something like that should do. And we're gonna grab the pen tool and I'm just gonna go on with the mask. So you kind of wanna create spikes, just like that, and you wanna make them sharp. So instead of extending, just keep creating points like that. All right, let's close it up. Also, I feel like it could be a bit higher, maybe like that, we'll see in a second. All right, so now we're gonna proceed to adding the effects. So I'm gonna add roughen edges to this. And we need to mess around with the values a little bit. So change the border to 45 and complexity to 10. So this is gonna give us that harsh edge over here, which is pretty cool, kind of like ripped paper. And then also we wanna make it extremely dark. So for this, we're gonna use exposure and I'm gonna set it to -4.5. Alright, so it's barely visible, but it's gonna help a lot with our effects. Next, we're gonna solo out the layer and then we're gonna go for the new null object and I'm gonna rename it to controller 1. Alright, now I'm gonna select these two and then I'm gonna parent them to our controller. So that way, if we move it here, it's gonna move everything. And then we wanna create a very linear, slow movement. So I'm gonna create a keyframe for position here. Then we're gonna move to the right somewhere here when it disappears. And I'm just gonna slightly decrease the value. Alright, so we're gonna have something like that. And then also as for the beginning over here, we can go a little bit towards the right. And just in case, we can scale up our animation over here. Something like that should do, and then we're gonna extend it to slow down the whole movement. And this should be good enough. Alright, then we're gonna need another controller. So what I'm gonna do is select this, hit Ctrl D, then hit U, and we're gonna delete the last keyframe over here. Now this is important, we're gonna parent 1 to 2. And we're gonna be able to overlap the movement. So we're gonna introduce a new movement while this one is still gonna keep going. So essentially before we mess around with the position, we need to hold Shift, click S, and we're gonna keyframe scale. And right after one frame, I'm gonna zoom in, just so the bar is kind of filling out the whole frame. But we still wanna see a little bit of Google over here. So now this is gonna jump like that, but what we wanna do is right click, go to toggle hold keyframe, and just click on it, and you're gonna be able to lock in that movement. So basically we can extend it and then it's not gonna have that gradual change. It's just gonna have a jump cut. Right, let's move it back. And then also in the original version, I had a different text over here. So I'm gonna go into the Google search. Then we're gonna zoom in and we can change the text over here. So I'm just gonna paste it. And this is literally what I use for the original animation. So we can close it down for now. And then it's gonna be also important to create typewriter effect, because whenever we introduce another movement, it's gonna kind of follow the text, which is gonna look pretty sick. So in case if you don't have Motion Essence, you just type in the text and then what you want to do is add typewriter. Then if you hit U, you're going to have the keyframes, so all you need to do is just adjust them and you're going to be pretty much set. Alright, let's delete it, and then once we have that jump cut over here, we can actually move towards the right with our position. So I'm gonna grab X and move it towards the left, just so the intro is somewhere here. Also, we can have that Google search for a bit longer, so I'm gonna extend it. Alright, so the next thing you wanna do is fix that movement over here because it's very linear, and this time we need to have a nice smooth graph. So select both keyframes for position and move over to the graph editor, and we're gonna hit F9, and then I'm gonna drag the yellow dot to the left. So essentially we kinda wanna create a peak somewhere on the left side, just like that. Alright, so this is a bit too early, so what we could do is just move that layer forward and then make sure that these keyframes, whenever we have the jump cut, are placed right at the position of the peak, so of the fastest movement. You see, just because we place the keyframes over here at the fastest movement, we got an extremely seamless transition. Let me just see it with a crispy quality. Yo, this is so good. So this whole animation is mostly about stacking the effects because they are making the biggest difference. So what I'm gonna do is right click, go to new, adjustment layer, and we're gonna rename to displacer. So now we're gonna use a plugin which is free, so all you need to do is just head over to Google and type in Displacer Pro. Then just install the plugin, restart After Effects, and you should be set. So what I'm gonna do is click on that layer and we need to add Displacer Pro. And then if you want the exact same result, you just head over to the chromatic aberration and you want to set red to 1.13 and then green is going to be set to 0.93. Then we're going to make sure to keyframe scale. I'm going to hit U, we're going to move to the beginning and we're going to set it to 116. Now move 10 frames forward or 11 and we're going to place that keyframe over here. I'm going to select both keyframes, hit F9. And regular procedure is going to the graph editor and just create a peak on the left, right? Something like that should do. So this is already looking pretty sick without other effects. And basically Displacer Pro is just using that distortion with RGB, which is looking pretty sick. I highly recommend to play around with different values because that way you're gonna figure out what that plugin is about. It could be really impactful for your animations, so yeah, just highly recommend it. Alright, but for now we're gonna turn off that effect and I'm gonna create a new adjustment layer and we wanna rename to exposure. And let's add the effect. Here what you want to do is alt click the stopwatch for exposure and we're going to type in wiggle and in brackets we're going to add 10, let's do 0.3. So this is going to give us the blinking effect, you can notice it here, and yeah, just looks pretty cool. Then we can turn it off for now for a better performance and we're going to create a new adjustment layer again. So this time this is going to be called levels plus blur and we're going to add these two effects. Actually for the blur we're going to use Gaussian blur. And essentially we want to have that impact in the beginning, so we kind of want to make it blurry and at the same time make it a bit brighter. So what I'm going to do is create a keyframe for histogram and also the blurriness, and we're going to hit U. And here we're going to crank it up just like that. And then we're going to grab that point over here. Let's just squeeze it in like that. Maybe something like that should do. You have to keep in mind that we're also going to have other effects, so we can't go overboard with this. Actually, we can squeeze in these keyframes over here, and then I'm going to select them all, hit Ctrl C, and somewhere over here we're going to paste them. So now the goal is to time reverse them, so I'm going to right click, go to Keyframe Assistant, time reverse. And this is important, we're going to copy the first set of keyframes over here. Actually, this is not the first, this is the third, so we're going to copy and paste it somewhere here. So essentially we kind of want to add a little bit of impact whenever we got this transition. So what I'm going to do is squeeze it in, and then I'm going to make sure that middle keyframes over here are matching that jump cut. You see, so this is giving us a little bit more impact and it's making it even more seamless. As for these, we can hit F9, go to the graph editor, and we're just gonna squeeze the peak towards the left. Then we're gonna need to create a new solid and we're gonna rename it to fractal noise. Let's add the effect, and this is gonna serve us as a map for the compound blur. So you're gonna need to follow along with the settings. So for starters, we're gonna head over here to the fractal type. We're gonna set it to turbulent sharp. Then as for the noise type, it's gonna be spline. We're gonna invert, set the contrast to 150. Brightness to 35, and we're gonna open up transform. Here we're gonna set the scale to 500 and I'm gonna bump up the complexity to 20. Then I'm gonna open up sub settings and we're gonna change the sub influence to 80 and sub scaling is gonna be set to 55. Then you want to alt click the stopwatch over here and we're going to type in actually posterize time. We're going to place 8 in brackets. Then you want to add this, I don't know how it's called. Then in the next line you want to add wiggle, and in brackets we're going to add 2,10. Add this thing again, hit enter, and what we're going to do next is add time. Then asterisk 250. So that way we're gonna have something like that, which is gonna look pretty cool for the compound blur. Shout out to Jack in Motion, I took it from him, I just remade it a little bit. Then what we're gonna do is actually close it down, and I'm gonna create a new adjustment layer, and I'll rename to compound blur. Let's add the effect. And here in the blur layer, you wanna set this to fractal noise, and then change to effects and masks. Also maximum blur is gonna be set to 15. And we're gonna disable our fractal noise. So that way, if you take a closer look, we're gonna notice a little bit of blur. I can actually bump it up to show you better. So that's how it's gonna look if you crank it up like crazy. But yeah, let's stick to 15, which is one subtle touch. So here you have it, how it looks with all the effects for now. And something that I absolutely love about Displacer Pro is that you can see the Google colors woven together with the background video over here. So especially if we add deep glow, this is gonna look fire. To make it more consistent for all of us, we're gonna add tritone effect over here. So that way by default we're gonna have that vintage look in the background. We can actually place it over here. And then we need to take care of the color for the entire image. So what I'm gonna do is right click, go to new, adjustment layer. I'm gonna rename to Lumetri, actually Lumetri color. Let's add the effect and we're gonna head straight to the curves. Now here you wanna make it a little bit darker for the shadows. So that way the background is getting pretty dark and we can focus more on the middle over here, but we can also light it up with the S curve. Then we're gonna close down the curves, go to the color wheels, and we're gonna give it that bluish touch. So just set the shadows to something blue, and then we're gonna go back to our video over here because we need to make one fix. So basically, whenever we are over here and I turn on the transparency grid, you're gonna notice that our screen is empty. And we don't want it because it's not gonna look with the Displacer Pro. So what I'm gonna do is essentially scale it up over here before the jump cut. So just make sure to place the playhead over here and then use scale. You can also play around with position. So that way it should be good, but at the same time, I kind of wanna see more spikes whenever we're transitioning into another scene. So I'm gonna make sure to keyframe scale and position, and then right before the jump cut, we're gonna place them. And one frame forward, so basically we're matching the keyframes with our controller 2 over here. And here we're just gonna basically scale it down and maybe place it like that. And this is gonna be very noticeable, but it's gonna look better. Also, we can right click and use toggle hold keyframe. And then to add a little bit more impact, we're gonna use another adjustment layer. I'm gonna place it below our displacer. I'll rename to shake, and right at the transition we're gonna use H4K subtle breeze. So let's see how it looks. So it's just gonna help a little bit with the impact, which is looking pretty sick. And then what we need to do is head over to the Google search and we're gonna add deep glow, and this is way too intense. So what we're gonna do is bump up the radius to 2000 and we're gonna change the exposure to 0.2. And in my opinion, it's a bit too bright over here. So I'm gonna head over to the levels plus blur. And as for that last keyframe over here, we're just gonna change that point this time. Alright, this is looking pretty sick. Now as for the background over here, we're gonna create a new solid. So let me just do it. I'm gonna rename to BG, use black color, and drop it below everything. Also make sure to turn on the motion blur. And in terms of levels, I actually went overboard with that over here. So I'm gonna hit U and I'm gonna make sure that that keyframe over here is not taking our entire glow because it literally disappeared. So we need to probably put it more somewhere here. And that way we also see the background. Alright, I think we're gonna leave it like that and it's looking absolutely fire. So yeah, let's stick with that. Alright, we're gonna wrap it up here. Hopefully you enjoyed the tutorial. Make sure to check out the video on the screen. You got Black Friday early access in the description, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers guys.